Don't be stupid, NFL teams. Sign your guys early or trade them. Just do something. But these camp holdout players who are negotiating extensions seem to rarely work out for NFL teams. Comment below if I'm wrong, but there's a bunch of examples of it working out. But it seems like you just end up overpaying or pissing off your star player every single time. And it seems to be like it would be easier to just cough up the money sooner and not end up having to pay 15 to 20% more than you would normally have to pay. So just trade the guy. Just trade him. Like if you can recoup value from this star player that you clearly do not already want to sign, just trade the guy, So, but all these half measures and just delaying the process are brutal for all parties involved. The player, the front office, the coaches, the teammates of this player too, having to deal with the constant questions from the media as well. And then the fans, it's a brutal situation for the fans. So all these camp holdouts are brutal situations for the fans. Now, the notable holdout and contract situations going on are Terry McLaurin from Washington. Right now, he is holding out. James Cook from Buffalo is practicing, but he wants a new contract. That's the same thing for Cortland Sutton from Denver. He's practicing, but wants a new contract. Juwan Jennings from San Francisco, also practicing, but wants a new contract. Micah Parsons is a potential holdout. He's not practicing from an injury, but he could potentially hold out. And then obviously we have the two Cincinnati guys with Trey Hendrickson holding out and Shamar Stewart as a rookie holding out is crazy. But the last three guys that I mentioned being from Dallas and Cincinnati, Dallas and Cincinnati got to be the two worst teams in the NFL with this every single year. It seems like every year these two teams have something like this happen. It happened for Burrow, Chase, Higgins, and now Trey Hendrickson for Cincinnati. And it happened, remember, a while back for Ezekiel Elliott, now Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and obviously now for Micah Parsons in Dallas. Cincinnati does it because Mike Brown doesn't want to pay anything because he's a cheap son of a bitch. And Jerry does it in Dallas because he wants the attention, but equally are as annoying for both of us. So I'm going to kick it to Joe. Joe, what do you think about all these contract holdouts and which one do you think is the most important going on right now?
It's crazy when you see teams like this and things like this happen. Shamar Stewart as a rookie, obviously, is a big problem. At first there was things that they were saying there was a bunch of new language in his contract that, it's not normal. Then you come and find out, well, there's nothing. We were probably the Cincinnati Bengals came and said, well, we were probably the last ones to the table to add these clauses into the contract. From what I understand, this is now standard. And so it's, he said, she said stuff, but it was never good for a rookie, never good for a first round pick. But, when you look at the Cincinnati Bengals, like I said, this is par for the course for them. And when you see teams like Pittsburgh Steelers, who are direct rivals of them, and the Cleveland Browns, who are direct rivals of them, resetting the pass rusher market, like at that point, you're like, what is happening? So yeah, like you said, I mean, Shamar Stewart is a rookie. You can't really be doing that stuff. At first, we thought there was a bunch of stuff in his contract that, was weird and crazy. But then you come out and the Cincinnati Bengals are like, well, we're the last ones to add this stuff in there. He's just, holding out for these reasons. This is now par for the course for rookie contracts. And so it's a bunch of he said, she said stuff. But on the flip side of that, they do this all the time. Like you said, it seems to be every season we hear about the Cincinnati Bengals or the Dallas Cowboys holding, some player holding out because they want what they're due and the team just unwilling to budge. And the biggest thing you have here with Trey Hendrickson is that you literally watch your rivals in Cleveland and Pittsburgh reset the pass rusher market with Myles Garrett and TJ Watt. So him holding out after leading the league in sacks, second in quarterback hits, tied second for tackles for loss, you end up in the situation where you have this guy who, since he's been with you, has produced double-digit forced fumbles, at least double-digit sack numbers all the time, including 17 and a half in the past 2 years, combining for 35 total over that span. And you don't want to pay him. Like, this is clearly something where you said, I spent a bunch of money on offense and my defense was worse than the league last year. Why do I want to pay a player who's on one of the worst defenses in the league? Well, because he's one of the best players in the NFL, and it's not his fault that your defense was dog shit. He's the only reason you guys weren't absolutely blown out in every game or had to put up 50 just to stay alive is because of Trey Hendrickson. So to your point, Cincinnati it doesn't make sense. They're one of the worst run organizations in the league. We know that because when you do the NFLPA and how the families are treated, they're got the worst grade in the NFL. They're consistently talked about as a mediocre franchise, and mediocre in just about every capacity of these things. And then you combine the fact that, at the end of the day, they literally do nothing for their players, right? They wait. They end up having to pay them more because the market cap resets for all these guys. And so it's not surprising. On the other side of that, a guy you mentioned was Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin was the best wide receiver in an offense that absolutely thrived with Jaden Daniels under center. And he is aging. That is a concern. He probably wants a lot of guaranteed money. But at the same time, He's the best player that you have in your wide receiver corps. You have to keep him around because you have a young quarterback who's still learning to be a quarterback in the NFL. It does not make sense. You made all of the right decisions. You made all the right moves 1 year ago. It does not mean you get to start doing dumb shit now. Pay the guy. But on the flip side of that, the players have to understand what they're putting themselves in for right now, because if you're not going to show up for training camp, you're probably not coming for preseason games. And then you're talking about possibly holding out into, week 1, week 2, where your game checks come in. And there was a player back in 2002 held out. I can't remember his name right now, but he actually saw an article that caused him to not, after 2 games, of how much money he was losing. He was losing like $563,000 a game. And he was like, damn, I don't want to lose any money. And you have the agents of these players that hold out. It's like, you have to teach them this is a business decision. It's not personal. You have to play business. If you're not ready to go into this thing and hold out this way, you have to show up, because the team won't budge. They don't have to pay you that. They're not worried about it. They're not, right? They want it done. And everyone knows this is heartache, and it's like a toothache. It's just always there. It's painful. But at the end of the day, no one wants it to happen. Everyone wants you to be on the field. But you have to decide are you financially prepared to take this into the regular season? And teams, can you deal with not having your guy? Like the Cowboys right now, they're expecting to be ready to go into the regular season to be a contender, right? They're expecting that to be in that division to be a contender. And then you look at it and you're like, now without Micah Parsons, you're not. So I don't know how they go forward from here. But yeah, this is something that nobody ever wants to see. And the agents and the players and the coaches and the owners all hate this when it happens, which makes it even more surprising that it happens at all.
Yeah, it's always an unfortunate situation whenever something like this happens. I know as far as us Patriots fans have gone, and I don't remember it happening too often for the Dolphins as well. But we haven't really had to deal with this too often, So it's like when it does happen and you're seeing it from the outside looking in, you're like, man, this is insane. Especially too, like you mentioned with Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin's so important to that offense because even though they got Deebo Samuel, like that's 2 completely different types of receivers. Like Deebo Samuel can't just step into Terry McLaurin's role, just like Terry can't step into Deebo's role, So again, it's going to completely change how they operate that offense if Terry McLaurin isn't in there. So yeah, that's a very interesting situation over there in Washington. But Sammy, tell us, man, what's going on with all these contract holdouts, and which one do you think is the most important?
I think the most important is hands down the Trey Hendricksons, because there's no way you can validate not paying a player who has had 17 and a half sacks for 2 straight years. You just can't validate that. He was a first team All-Pro and led the league in sacks last year. And then on top of that, you said last year that we're not going to pay you this year. We're going to pay you next year. Well, he has a better year. Now the price goes up, and now the Bengals are in this debacle. Now we got to remember, before all of this happened, Jamar Chase was planning on holding out last year as well. So Jamar Chase had a price. His price went up, and they had to pay Jamar Chase. The same thing can be said about T. Higgins, except with T. Higgins, they kept trying to franchise tag him. They franchise tagged that man to death. And then eventually Joe Burrow was like, sign him. And since he's your precious baby boy, you give him what he wants. But now that leaves the problem of Trey Hendrickson. Now, I do want to say this about the Shamar Stewart situation. That feels more like an agent thing more than it is a front office thing. It feels more like an agent thing because this doesn't happen at all ever to any other team. Here's my theory. If we could put our tinfoil hats on here, I think the agent knows the reputation of the Bengals and is trying to make the Bengals look bad on PR to give pressure to the Bengals organization to give Shamar Stewart the contract that he wants. Now, do I think it's going to work? Absolutely not. However, it was worth a shot, I guess. Now, with Hendrickson, I can't think of a stupid reason. They had the worst defense in the league last year, essentially. And now you're going to pay the guy to do the best performance. Like, think about the pass rushers that he is next to right now, okay? There are the TJ Watts of the world. There's the Myles Garretts of the world. He's outperforming them. Statistically, he's outperforming. Now, on tape, we could get into that stuff. It's a little different. But statistically, objectively, outperforming these players, and you're not giving him that kind of money, that's a complete shame. And honestly, the Bengals did this to themselves. Like, this is all on the front office, is all on ownership. And I don't know how they're going to be able to fix any of this. The relationship seems completely tarnished. As for Terry McLaurin, it's a different situation because I feel like the Washington Commanders are seeing his age and they're seeing his production and they're thinking, what is his price? Is he asking for too much? We really don't know. We don't know these conversations that are happening in these meeting rooms. But what I will say is the Commanders are kind of losing time and their wide receiving core isn't good enough to warrant them thinking about it. They got Deebo Samuel, Noah Brown, Luke McCaffrey, and Michael Gallup. Respectfully, I love Jaden Daniels. You're not going back to the NFC Championship with that wide receiving core. And on top of that, I was like combining Terry McLaurin and Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels, yes, he's a great QB, but like a slump is going to happen eventually. And you'd love a safety blanket. Terry McLaurin is that safety blanket. And I think considering when you're going to have to pay Jaden Daniels eventually, we're going to start having that conversation not too long. It's going to be like, 2 years? I say pay Terry McLaurin right now, right? While he's 30, while he's young, pay him this contract while Jaden Daniels is in his rookie year and try to win right now. You have the roster to win right now. You brought in Laramie Tunsil. He's going to be great for your offensive line. In my opinion, it is essential that the Commanders understand what they have right now and they seize the moment rather than think about the price tags. Because right now, you're trying to win a Super Bowl, and when you win a Super Bowl, things are different. It doesn't matter what kind of contract holdouts you're dealing with. It doesn't matter what happens really throughout the season. You won a Super Bowl. So overall, I think the Commanders are in a bit of a more complicated situation. They're stuck between a rock and a hard place right now because of, I understand why they wouldn't give Terry the contract, but they got to understand the situation. The Bengals are just stupid. Like, there's really nothing else to wrap our minds around.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about it like the agents trying to make the Bengals look bad. I think the Bengals do a pretty good job of that on their own. I think that's just kind of their brand at this point. Like, hey, we're going to make ourselves look bad and everybody's going to make fun of us for it. Back to your point on the Commander situation. I mean, like you said, like they're in a win now mode. And you know, I was preparing for an episode that we're actually about to record. I looked at who's the oldest roster in the NFL. The Washington Commanders have the oldest roster in the NFL. So again, it's a win now team. Yeah, it doesn't feel like it because obviously you have the rookie in Jaden Daniels, but you just brought in Deebo Samuel, who's getting up there a little bit. You got Terry McLaurin, Bobby Wagner, obviously on that defense is really important. He's up there in age. Laramie Tunsil's a veteran, you know, so there's a lot of veteran pieces on that team. So like you said, Sammy, it's a win now team, and you know you want to sign your win now wide receiver in Terry McLaurin as far as that goes. But either way, teams just pay your guys. Like we've seen it with, you were talking about the situations with Cincinnati and how, you know, the price went up every single time. Same thing with Dallas. Price went up with Zeke. Price went up with Dak. Price went up with CD. Price just went up massively with Micah Parsons because we just saw the deal that TJ Watt and Myles Garrett got. Now you're going to have to pay Micah Parsons even more than that. So again, the teams, if you know you have a guy, just pay him. Just say, hey, we want you on our team. We're going to pay you now so we don't have to pay you the extra $10 million in a couple of years. And if you don't want him on your team, trade him. Just give him to a different team and let him go work somewhere else. But either way, these holdouts, hopefully these situations resolve for all the teams involved and all the players involved, and we'll see how it plays out.
This has been Between the Uprights. Football is life. The rest is just details.